So I'm going to talk about all the ways that rogue hires try and work their way into a business, the weak points in the business that they pick at, and some of the tried and tested methods and tactics that people are using right now to try and stop them from working their way into the network, stealing the money, loading up the network with malware. And I'm also going to give one or two examples of some of the most prolific attacks currently targeting freelancers, self-employed people and contractors. So let's get right into it. So prior to joining Rapid7, I was looking for work for quite some time. I spent a lot of time applying for jobs on LinkedIn. I spent a lot of time applying for jobs on Monster and Reed and all the other sites you're probably familiar with. And what I found seemed to match a lot of the research that was done a couple of years ago into the current state of the job market, in that a lot of the jobs that are out there are just fakes and frauds. They're not real. So you have these things called ghost jobs, which are posted online to job sites by legitimate businesses, but these jobs don't exist. They post these things to the various job portals to give the impression of endless, continuous growth, which is good for them, and it's not so good for the applicant because you are just wasting your time. Like, at best, you are wasting your time. At worst, and especially if you apply through the click-throughs on LinkedIn and other places, and the application's handled by third-party companies and marketers, you end up on spam lists, you end up getting signed up to fake job sites that you didn't even know existed. And on top of that, there's an awful lot of malicious job listings out there in the wild. They're targeting applicants with theft, wire fraud, malware, scams. People lose huge amounts of money to these things on a regular basis. And on top of all of that, you've got rogue hires. There are malicious and non-malicious. Now, what I mean by that is there are rogue hires that are just straight up bad, and they will try and, get into your network, steal money, steal confidential secrets, sell them on, blackmail. And then you've got the non-malicious employees, and there can be some crossover there, but they generally just want to get paid and do the absolute bare minimum for it, and they'll use... They're not like the sort of traditional slacker employee. They're people who have sort of deceptively made the way in, and then they will do the bare minimum to keep cashing those checks till they're shown the door. So there's a whole bunch of different types of rogue applicants, and they tend to fit into one of these three archetypes. So you've got the malicious applicants. They can work alone. They can be team players. Their plans vary. I've seen examples where they try to get into the business and then gather as much info as they could from the internal databases and perform, CFO fraud, business email compromise. They may want to just steal some data and blackmail the business. You've got the state-sponsored rogue employees that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. They tend to be freelancers working in a country that's not their own. They almost always seem to target tech industry organizations, and they do actually work. I mean, when I speak to people about this, they assume that if it's a state-sponsored rogue worker, they're just there to steal data. A lot of the time, they're not. A lot of the time, they are actually there to do the job, and some of them do it quite well, because the whole aim of the game is to cash those checks and send them back home, whether it be North Korea or somewhere else. And you do not want your business to get involved in sending money home to North Korea. And the really interesting one for me are the proxy employees. So these co-work with your actual employees. So over here, you've got your actual legitimate employee. Over here, you've got the proxy employee that is very often based in India. And how this works is the real employee pays the proxy employee $100, $200 a month to do all of their work for them. And this is now branching out into something called overwork. So this is where people, especially in the gig economy, have realized that that all the bills are going up. The amount of money that they're making isn't enough. So they've come up with this idea where they will attempt to work 3, 4, 5 full-time employee jobs simultaneously. And there's a whole pile of tricks and tactics that they will make use of to do this, and they will often they will make use of these proxy employees to do it rather than trying to juggle 4 or 5 different jobs simultaneously. They just keep portioning out cuts to their proxy employees. And this is a big thing now. There are overworker forums, there's overworker subreddits where people can learn all of the technical tricks to do as a minimal amount of a job as possible while still getting paid. And when I talk to people in HR and hiring, both online and in the real world, they are quite despondent about some of these weak points because they never seem to have enough protections in place for the screening, the interview, and the onboarding. In some cases, they just don't have anything because they've never thought about this. They've never thought that there's rogue employees out there. So during the screening process where you send in your resume and you try and get yourself noticed, the aim of let's just for simplicity's sake call them the attacker. The attacker's aim is to solidify their work credibility. So they come up with a nice convincing resume. They try and make sure all the dates of previous employment line up. There are services again, popular in India, where people will, for a couple of $100, they will fake the documentation you need, and also your work history. So they will serve as the fake, reference for a period of time, be it like a year, 2 years, or even 3 years for the most expensive packages. If they manage to get through that into the interview stage, then the aim of the game is to evade detection from the processes that they assume that the business has in place to detect a fraudster. They want to convince them all is well, all is normal, and there's nothing to see here. And at the point where they get the job, they're through to the onboarding process, which can be a couple of weeks, it can be a month. Some places do it for 2 or 3 months. And at that point, they've essentially won. They just need to lay low, score the win, and then they are free to just make as much money as they can before they're found out, or they leave. Or it's a smash and grab where the aim of the game is to get into the business, grab something as quickly as they can, and then just disappear and take their presumed fake credentials with them. But there are ways that you can combat this. And again, this isn't like theoretical. These are things that people are actually doing now to try and stop this from happening. So applicant tracking systems have become incredibly popular in the last couple of years. For finding duplicates, because what people have found is that fake employees will very often use the same email address for multiple applications. They will use the same collection of, they will go to a well of fake names, the same generic background info, and it's a lot easier to find these things automatically with a tool designed to do this than it is to do it manually, especially if you apply for a job on LinkedIn. You can see how many people apply, and it's not uncommon to see 100, 200, 300 applications in a day for a typical job. So those are extremely useful. Consistency, does the backstory add up? What I have found is that a lot of the background details, the background fluff, the things that people try and impress the interviewer with in the resume and in the interview itself, bits of background history about their life, their family, their interests, where they're from. People forget about this, and it never normally gets really talked about in the interview, which if you're there fraudulently is gold. It's absolute gold, because you don't have to juggle this sort of elaborate web of lies over, from the point where you give them the resume to the point where you're doing the interview and beyond. Verify. Lots of businesses now use verification services to verify, the realness of the degree and check biometrics. And a lot of companies are now rolling their own systems. So to give you an example, if you apply for a job and say you have a degree, a good system will automatically flag that and immediately say, okay, show us proof of the degree. Now, I know cases where people have been hired, but they manage to sort of get away with it. Oh, well, I've lost my degree certificate, or I'll pass it to you afterwards, and they never do. Someone I know came up with a system where it does that, but depending on the country of origin for the degree, it will ask for additional documentation that they know comes with that degree. So if you have a degree from the UK, you'll probably have transcripts, and if you don't know what those are, it's basically a big piece of paper that lists all of the course modules, all of the scores, the credits, whether you passed and failed, and you can get copies of these from your university for a fee. So if you mention the transcripts to someone who claims to have a degree from the UK and the reaction is, what's a transcript? transcript, you know immediately that something is not quite right. Now, in the interview, again, just to stress, these are things that people are doing now to try and ward off the fraudsters. It's very common now to ask a candidate on their interviews to turn off the background blur, because so many people are now using AI, both on the computer and off to the side on a phone, that you can immediately see their surroundings. You can see if they're looking to the side at something or someone's passing them the answers. Someone I know stopped an interviewee in their tracks because they actually realized they had a phone off to the side with the answers, because their eyes were just fixed right. Their eyes did not move for the entire interview. They were just dead center, and they quickly realized that they're looking off to the side at this phone and then typing in the answers. Hometown pop quiz and check the lighting. Now, again, this goes back to all those bits and pieces of background info the candidate has given you on the resume and elsewhere in casual conversation, maybe from their LinkedIn page. If you know someone that's actually lived in the place where they claim to have come from, and you're not familiar with it, you should ask them, what are the interesting features of the city? What are popular places? What is this person likely to have done while existing in this place that they claim to have been in? It's quite common to catch people out with these kinds of questions. And checking the lighting, my friend who caught someone using, AI eyes that did not move, also caught someone else out because they insisted they turn off the background blur. And this is as local as you can get, because the person being interviewed, they were supposed to be being interviewed in the daytime. When they turned off the blur in the background, there was a bright light on. In the background, there was an open window, and it was clearly nighttime. I think they said you could see the moon. So obviously, again, they are not who they claim to be. Unusual behavior. Now, this one is interesting. Repeating the question. If you do events like this, if you do conferences or any form of speaking, one of the first things you learn is to always repeat the question back to the audience, because not everybody will have heard the question. And somehow, at some point, this has turned into a trick for people using AI tools during interviews to stall for time. So if you're doing an interview and someone weirdly, mechanically starts repeating your question back to you very slowly and deliberately, there's a good chance that they're waiting for one of their AI tools to pipe the answer to them. And then they will give you that, which is also a good reason for making sure they've not got earbuds or headphones in or anything like that. And finally now, people who do hiring are actually trying to trick and trap people using AI. So they will try and make AI hallucinate. So if I'm doing the interview and you're the interviewee, you've got your phone there and it's giving you the answers off screen, it's now not unheard of for someone to be firing, the kind of questions you'd expect at them, and then throw in just a nonsense question, all the better if it's related to some form of tech or coding or engineering. And if the person says anything in response to this completely fictitious question other than, I don't know, sorry, and they come back instead with some sort of mangled, gibberish tech speak, again that they've made the AI completely freak out and give them a nonsense answer. And some people are now actually hands-off typing during interviews. If people are suspicious, they will actually randomly ask the candidate to stop typing and lift their hands up and see if the thing that they're typing in a coding test continues to clatter away on the screen. They will ask them to raise their hands, move away from the keyboard completely. So there are lots of ways that you can catch people out in interviews, and these are just a couple of the stranger ones. And even at onboarding, not all is lost. You can restrict access. It's not uncommon for people to go into onboarding and they've got immediate access to everything, rather than here's a couple of onboarding channels and the stuff you need for your job, whether it's Slack or Teams or your platform of choice. They don't have to have free reign. And this is a much older problem, but there's really no reason now, with so much work is done remotely and this problem out there, for people to be sent laptops that just gives them free reign to install wherever they feel like. This is how you end up with those state-sponsored attacks in the news, where people have just been given completely unprotected laptops, and then they're getting remote access software on there and file transfer software on there and all sorts of other stuff. You don't need to let them do it. Valid ID, if you've got to send out a laptop to somewhere, and again, this is fairly common now, you absolutely should use a service that will verify the ID of the person picking up the laptop before you hand it over. Now, this isn't foolproof because a lot of the groups that do stuff like this are involved in, convincing forged documents, stolen ID. But this is better than doing nothing and just giving them the laptop and off they go into the distance with it. And regular check-ins, this one surprised me. It turns out that there are some companies out there where, for the onboarding stage, the new hire may not actually interact with the person that is going to be their boss, their manager at the end of it, at all. And if there's one person in the entire organization that's going to work directly with the rogue hire and be able to figure out quickly there's something not quite right with this employee, it's their boss. So this is something that some businesses I've talked to, they're like, oh yeah, we better start doing that. It seems obvious, but a lot of these things are really not, because it's not really anything anyone's had to think about. So those are some of the things you can do to try and ward off rogues from making their way into your organization. I'm now going to talk about just two of the most prolific attacks out there at the moment targeting freelancers. So this is the fake music CEO scam. So what they want is cryptocurrency. They get it through fake music contracts. It begins with the scammer targeting marketing and PR professionals online. And as I've said, they target freelance musicians. So this is a bunch of search results from Google. I've heavily redacted this. They will go online, they will dig out the details of this person in particular, who is a genuine, PR pro at a well-known agency. This person then becomes multiple profiles on SoundCloud's social media portal platform. These are very new profiles. They've already got lots of followers. That's 176 opportunities to take money from an individual. And I get messages like this all the time. This is a fake A&R agent for Sony. Hi, how are you? I admire your work. It's fantastic. Are you signed? I'm a rep for Sony Music, working directly under the leadership of President Mr. Rob Stringer. Of course you are. As a member of the A&R department, we're focused on discovering and signing talented artists, and I'm going to introduce you to Rob. So, of course, Rob introduces himself to me via WhatsApp. I get sent this ridiculous contract. They're going to pay me $980,000 a year for income, $125,000 for upkeep for some reason, money for studio equipment. And the whole time that this is going on, I'm waiting for them to tell me what the scam is. This person was very, very reticent to actually say how they were going to take the money from me. So they were obviously very suspicious. But they were going to get the money from me by implementing a project tracker and charging me $300. I don't know why they couldn't have just deducted $300 from my $980,000 a year, but that's how they roll. And their payment options were time-limited PayPal and Bitcoin, but they prefer the Bitcoin. That's where they want you to give them the money. So in terms of the actual Bitcoin address, and they torched the Bitcoin address the same day they realized I wasn't going to pay them. The game was up and they canned it. There were 86 transactions. 46 of those were inbound, so they're the people being scammed out of the money. This person, Mr. Fake Rob Stringer, was sent a total of just over $6,000 from January to March of this year, which for the minimal amount of work involved is a fair amount of cash, because some of the messages I was sent from this were semi-automated. And as a final roll of the dice, they will upload your music, steal it, on their company's database. What this means is they will put your stuff on a fake Sony portal, and then they will tell you they need to charge you for the web hosting. Unbelievable. But people end up paying this. So, if you're approached by our social platforms in relation to music, if there's clones galore of the PR agent, if there's project trackers, web host payments, fees for travel, it's going to be a scam. And I will very quickly talk about this, and then we're done. This is the task scam. This is very prolific. What they want is your savings. They give you fake work tasks. They'll approach you by messaging and LinkedIn DMs, and they target freelancers. So I get lots of messages like this. This is someone saying you just need to leave a 5-star rating on Google. You'll be paid £500 to £1,000 a day. If you sign up to this, you'll be given a website that's got lots of tasks listed, easy tasks at the bottom, impossible tasks at the top. They will actually pay you money for completing the first couple of tasks. For every tier you unlock, you have to pay them money to unlock the next tier. And by the end of it, you've paid them so much money, they will happily let you keep the £20 you've made. So there were lots of complaints on Reddit about a group of sites. I went and dug around. There were 20 of them. Servers were in Japan, India, and Singapore, clusters of 2 to 3 branded sites per scam. And they perform much the same way as the test scam I've just described. And what's interesting is a day or two after people complained about these sites on Reddit, fake recovery scammers started posting on Instagram and elsewhere using the web addresses as hashtags. Now, what's interesting here is, are they connected to the test scams? Do the test scammers take all your money and then take it again with the recovery scammers that claim they can get your money back? Or are the recovery scammers just an added layer of horribleness to the ecosystem, and they just monitor help forums and then, pillage that info off the back of the test scammers and make more money themselves? It's an interesting question, and I'm not really sure what the answer is. But if you're approached via chat app, if you're presented with lots of gamified tasks, if they claim to work with major brands, and importantly, if they say you need to pay tax to release funds, it's a scam. That's super common across lots of freelance scams. They will say to unlock your money, you need to pay 40% in income tax. But of course, they don't have you send it to the tax agency in your country. You send it to them, and then that money's gone as well. So they are 2 very popular, prolific scams targeting freelancers. Happy to talk about more of them if you would like me to. Afterwards, come and see me. I mention a lot of them in the paper as well. And feel free to ask me any questions you've got. Thank you.